I can understand. Thank you. It's empty.
Good call. Amazing, man. They can't hardly keep the road.
That's what I.
Was going, buddy? You missed the Mesa video. You couldn't even get in the parking lots. You don't have a parking lot, but,
Oh.
Grand Mesa. Remember?
I've been skiing, it's been really good. I've been skiing
Don?
2 inches of powder on a hard base, really good for cutting curves.
Yeah.
All right, 3 seconds, guys.
That's it. That's it. Small talk.
All this meeting, let's all stand in pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the roll call, please.
And
Present.
Mr. Newton,
President.
Smith,
Here.
Mr. Valentine, Mr. Marvel, Steve Weber.
Here.
All right, we can continue. First item on the agenda is, of course, the approval of the agenda. Can I give a motion?
I can move the agenda.
Can I have a second?
Second that.
Yes, Paige.
I would like to suggest that we move the 2 mayor's reports and the Parks Committee report higher on the agenda, because I don't know how long this meeting's going to take, but your mayor's reports always get short shrift. And I feel like there's some important information in there that we should ensure we get to, the same with the Parks Committee. So that my request would be to put it maybe in front of the consent agenda.
Well, we have,
Or you know something I don't know, but I just would like it to be further up. Unless this meeting, are you predicting
I predicted it's not going to be a
quickish meeting? Quickish?
It's going to be a quickish meeting.
Okay. Well,
Unless people start getting really wordy up here on the board.
oh my gosh,
That would never happen. I can definitely decide. I would rather not.
well, I guess at this point, I would like to make it known that I would love us to get to those.
Okay.
tonight. So we can
Hurry things along.
make it a work in progress. Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Nays?
No.
Okay.
Oh, aye, sorry.
Next is correspondence received. Anything you want to work on that? No, since that's coming back again, I think we're okay. Next is announcements. So I do have an announcement. The Pawnee Ditch Company is going to be having their annual meeting on Tuesday, the 14th of March. Corey Heinecker has offered to go to that and vote our 2015.5 shares for us. And I suggest that he is probably the best person to vote those 2015.5 shares. So I would ask the board's permission for Mr. Heinecker to go to the meeting and vote our shares.
If that's like the Fire Mountain, 2,000 shares goes through a 3/4 inch pipe. They're not Stewart, but it's shares.
Okay, if that's okay with the board, I would go ahead and approve that. Next up on the,
Announcement.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I am no longer on the town email system. It requires a 2-factor authentication app with cell phone. I do not own the cell phone. So there's no way for me to authenticate it. I'm a great believer in 2-factor authentication, but I use both a landline cell call or a landline phone call or email for verification. Microsoft One absolutely insists on using their app. A note to people that do put their app on the phone is that it wants to know your location all the time your phone's on. It asks permission to root through your data and get anything it wants and send it back to Microsoft. They promise not to share it with third parties, but if you trust Microsoft. To some extent, Sam, you have control over that. If you could give me a different verification system than a cell phone, I will be back on the town email system. Otherwise, anyone wanting to contact me should call me on my landline. I'm in a phone book, remember the phone book? And just leave a message because I get a lot of junk calls and I will call you back, or you can come knock on my door and sit down and have a cup of tea.
I'll call them tomorrow and see if we can get that taken.
All right, thank you, Dave.
That's really good to know, but I am not doing any two-factor authentication when I look at email. Am I missing
It
something?
happens, it'll kick in every 60 days. It depends upon where you are in the cycle. So it gave me 14 days to use the app and it timed out today, so I have no email.
I'm gonna just.
Sam is making notes.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Any other announcements? All right. Next is public comment. Does anyone want to address the board on anything that is not on the agenda? Being none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda. We've gone through the disbursements, we be in the finance committee and approved this.
All right. You have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion from the board? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Next up is the staff reports. India's and chairs, so we don't have that. Public Works.
Corey's on the Zoom.
Corey. Is
Can
there,
you
is there anything you would like to add to your Public Works report?
No, I just submitted that one in this packet because I didn't get the last one out in time for the last packet, so it's got what we worked on last month plus what we've been working on so far this month.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Corey? All right, seeing none.
Oh,
Yes, I'm sorry.
I just want to make a comment. I owned this in the town hall, but I also talked to Corey that in the 20 years John and I have lived here and we've seen a number of big snowfalls. This clearing for this snowfall was one of the best I've seen.
Much bigger in the 90s.
Yeah. And I'm just saying that the clearing of the snow in the last 20 years, I've seen a number of snowfalls that are very large. And I think the crew did a good job.
Thank you very much, Corey. Good, and good work to your crew too. Yes.
Corey, I have a question on, I think it's your last bullet point, which is we've been updating bids for the track vehicle. So will the buying of that track vehicle, is that slated to have to come out of the water fund? Or could it come out of multiple funds?
I think it was slated to come out of the water fund.
Okay.
That was
Yeah.
our discussion.
Can you tell me? Sorry.
So some of the bids we got on them once we had that in the budget for, I think it was like 30,000. Some the bids that we're getting back on them kind of exceed that. So we're trying to look at other options and see what we can come up with that's closer to that range.
Thank you. And I just have a piece of information to add to the snow removal. When we were going through disbursements, the town paid $7,000 to have all that snow removed. So if we have a lot of snowfalls, we're in trouble. We're in financial trouble.
One thing on that page is that we did clear out the center of the street. Historically, when we have big snowfalls, we would just go ahead and leave a strip of snow down the center of the street and not move it. So this constantly clearing out the streets and hauling it is what caused the $7,200 bill.
And part of that was because we lost 2 snowplows that day. So we had to bring in help.
So do you anticipate if the snowplows are back up and running now?
One of them is, Corey, are both of them back up or just the one?
The guys was able to get all of them back up and running, so we should be fully plowed.
So I withdraw that it could cost a lot of money in the future because it sounds like we can do a lot of the snow movement from inside the staff. Corey?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
It was kind of a difficult day on many parts.
I just was shocked when I saw that bill.
Next up on the agenda is the multimodal trail and park open connectivity of Colorado Westland. Libby?
So thank you very much for allowing me to take 5 minutes of your time tonight. My name is Libby Collins. I'm with Colorado Westland Trust. So a few years ago, I was invited by some of your local organizations, the Nature Connection and the Western Slope Conservation Center, to talk about a trail project. A trail project that spans multiple properties with different landowners. I have some experience in that. I had met Ben Graves with the Nature Connection, and he suggested I come up and, or I guess it's come down on the Grand Junction, based in Grand Junction, and talk about how to help him facilitate that project. So far, they've done a great job. They've already got that trail connected from the river park all the way over to the K-8 school and the school district property, and there's a nice loop on that. It's a great project and really applaud how that so far. The long-term vision of this project, though, is to connect that trail across the adjacent riverbank property that would connect to Price Road and or go across the river on a small piece of property that is currently owned by the town of Paonia. Both of these trails with the goal of ending up at the public library of the library park, as well as to provide general overall connectivity for the community. So we're now at a place, and that trail has tremendous benefit, I think. I don't think anyone will disagree that kids getting, having easy access to nature, the preservation of the wildlife habitat along the riparian corridor, and the general conservation of some parts of land for open space for the general public is just a great benefit for the residents of Paonia. Let me just back up a little bit, tell you that I'm with Colorado Westland Trust. We've been in existence for about 42 years. We work across Mesa, Delta, Montrose, Ouray, Gunnison, San Miguel counties. We've conserved about just over 127,000 acres, working mainly with private landowners across that landscape. There's another type of project that we do though, and that is using conservation as a tool to work with municipalities such as the town of Paonia to deliver projects that have large-scale community benefit, focused mostly on outdoor recreation, access to the outdoors and wildlife and nature, the conservation of our area. So I just want to provide an example of how we work with the city of Grand Junction. The city of Grand Junction and the Colorado Westland Trust have been partnering and collaborating for about 12 years to expand public access to one of Mesa County's most desired and popular trail systems, the Lunch Loop Trail System. We have worked with the city to acquire over 200 acres through 10 different land transactions to help them increase points of access to that very popular trail system, as well as host the alignment of a future paved trail that would connect downtown Grand Junction up to Colorado National Monument, as well as to the adjacent trail system. So we've conducted 10 land transactions there. We've helped to raise over $5.2 million to complete the project for land conservation as well as trail construction, partnering very closely with the city of Grand Junction as well as other local partners. And now, because the city of Grand Junction's public open space is still developing, we now also help them co-manage 200 acres by bringing volunteers and other organizations to help manage trail maintenance as well as conduct restoration of the land. So on that note, we are, what am I doing here? So as I continued discussion with the Nature Connection and the other local partners right here in Paonia, it made sense for me to just reach out to the landowner of Riverbank property, right? This is the last part that we need. We need some aspect of that land to be able to construct this trail. And to make sure that this trail is permanent, not just a temporary trail. So I did reach out to Old World LLC. I've been in discussion, had a number of discussions with the landowner. We've talked about a number of different options about how the land trust can work with that landowner. It makes sense for us to engage in this. We've had tremendous experience with land transactions and working with landowners, as well as fundraising for land. He has agreed that he would be agreeable to work with us to carve off a piece of his riverbank property that would be along the river corridor. Some, smallish number of acres. We haven't determined exactly what those number of acres are yet. For permanent acquisition, conservation, as well as a public trail that would. I was really happy to hear that he was willing to engage in this type of conversation, as well as be flexible with how he wanted to work with us. So we've been back in conversation with the Nature Connection primarily to talk about how this would work for the community. I've presented the project, just a summary of what our efforts are to Mary as well as Leslie, to see if there would be some interest in us moving forward with this. So my goal here tonight is to ask if town council would agree to further discussion with Colorado West Land Trust, my co-workers, as well as the local partners involved, to have a discussion about what this would mean. If the land trust was able to step in, work with the landowner, acquire the property, work with local organizations to raise the funding for that acquisition. And I do think that we have momentum right now working with the landowner. We're pretty excited about what could be possible. I know that the Nature Connection has done a tremendous amount of groundwork to ascertain funding opportunities. They have a terrific track record with a number of funders, as we do. So could we meet, discuss, and see what this could mean for the town of Paonia, the town council, and how we could possibly collaborate? I will say I understand that you all are incredibly busy with critical issues such as water and other municipal issues that you all work on. But I do feel that we have an opportunity right now to achieve this goal that has been a long-term vision for your residents and your community. And I think it would be a great win for the town of Paonia as well as the town council. Again, I think this partnership could be very strong, and we might just be able to make this happen. So that's my request for this evening, to engage in discussion. I'm not quite sure how that works. Do I come with my couple of my coworkers and meet with all of you? Is it a smaller group? Is it some staff? How do we move that discussion forward? And I don't really want to move too much further down this road. This property is within town limits. We don't want to get ahead of you all. So we'd like to do this in consultation and collaboration and see what how we could help make this a reality for the town.
So I'm going to ask the board, do you have any questions for Libby? Let's start there. All right.
This has been desired for a long time, this trail, and actually when the riverbank became part of the town and they were going to put a subdivision in there, one of the ideas in there was to actually complete this trail. At that time, we were going to pursue a grant to put a bridge across from the riverbank directly to the library because of safety concerns of running people over bridge? When you connect this up, are you gonna be running over the existing bridge?
So the way I understand it, just chatting with the few people that I have spoken to in this community is, I think you do want it to go out to Price Road so that there would be neighborhood access to this parcel and the trail system. But I do think you want a bridge across the river to connect directly to the public library. I mean, that is obviously an added expense, but however, Town of Paonia already owns a section of land right there. And I think it would be well worth incorporating that into the overall. That's my personal view at this point. But you know, again, it's funding, the timing of the bridge, et cetera. I think safety should be a major concern, and just connecting people to a busy road and sort of dropping them off. You know, I mean, there is some sort of sidewalk across that bridge, where Price Road comes out, but you're right, it's not great for little kids, K through 8 and families and, you know, just getting to the library. So that would be my.
Well, the, one of the things that's a question a lot of people have would be how much does it cost, whether the town can maintain it, those kind of things. We're not at that stage yet. This is more like fact finding is my understanding.
Correct.
And some of the things that occur to me is that the elementary school does not have a library. You know, so how do kids get access to research and stuff? Well, that's what I was told, they didn't. But anyway, it's the ability to be able to use some of the facilities in the library, the ability not to have to travel through streets and deal with traffic is a good thing. So it has not been a very viable plan up until now, because the way the trail was supposed to go was right into the middle of the Riverbank subdivision. And then there was an access between two properties across the bridge. And so it wasn't a very good setup in my book about a trail line. So I just like to see discussions happen. And of course, a lot of the questions you might have might come up as we go through those discussions.
Other question? Yeah.
I recall that we approved the design of a bridge at a previous meeting in the last year. Was that the intention that that bridge could serve as this connection?
Yes.
Right, so so obviously we approved a design.
Right.
But we have not approved any money.
Correct.
So would the location of that bridge, as it was proposed to us, and that design still be a viable piece of this
I think
project?
so, because it was part of the nature connection trail
Correct.
thing. So, yeah.
So it's still on the books for your.
Today's point. Do you have something to?
Well, just about the bridge, if this trail is approved, we can shorten that bridge significantly and lower the cost. As it is, it's going diagonally across the river because we had to go from the school property to the town property. And if we acquire this piece of property or the rights to the property, we can build it straight across the river and it'll make it significantly shorter, significantly cheaper. And I think it probably can happen a lot faster. The bridge has always been in the plan, but the thing is funding. And without having that piece of property too, that causes some problems. Building a trail just to dead end into that bridge, it works, but we can't access the areas we'd like to access with the trails. So what we're trying to do is not get the cart before the horse and build something that's not quite what we need or want. If we can negotiate with the landlord, that is one lane. They won't build on it, but they're still paying taxes on it. So it behooves them to get with us and put a conservation easement on it. Or the property is bought. Either way, but that's pretty far into the future yet. As long as we negotiate, that's I think what we should do. And I think that staff should be integral in this. Possibly because staff runs the town. We don't. And that's the way it should be.
We pretend to.
Any other questions from the board?
What should be our next step? Should we have the land trust meet with the mayor and Leslie? What she feels a proper way, because acquiring right now, our first goal is obviously not the bridge, that's the dream. Our first goal is to get the land settled. What do you feel is the best way to go?
I would say, I think we're happy to meet with Mary and Leslie. You know, I might want to open it up. Well, I'll let you guys decide that. What I would like to share with you is what the process is, what we think the timing will be, you know, and what are the obstacles to making this happen? What are the, you know, how can the city help us moving forward? So there are a lot of pieces that I want to make sure everyone is aware of, and we're all on the same page moving forward. So if that is meeting with Mary and Leslie, great. If it, you know, I'll leave that part up to you guys.
Maybe that would be the best thing, and then we could put together a written report and give it to the board.
Okay. That's just good.
Just to make it official, I'd like to make a motion that we proceed with this trail connectivity. Colorado Land Trust.
I'll second.
All right, further discussion from the board? Anything from the public? And I should have asked this before, but anything from the public? All right, we have a motion and a second to proceed with the land trust deal. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, so time, great for us. Thank you very much.
Take care.
All right. Next on the agenda is Phoenix Rising Resources Contract. Contract in our packets. Well,
Hi, everybody. I'm Kelly Rose, and the principal of Phoenix Rising Resources. My other teammates have colds and are not here this evening, but your primary point of contact will be Marissa. I'm just going forward, although I will also be part of it.
okay.
So I'm here to answer any questions you guys have.
Do we have any questions on this? I think.
I'll just mention that, Rick, I mean, Nick and I.
Okay. Yes,
I was just glad to see the coordination was actually written into the contract between what's going to happen with the housing group and this, so we're not stumbling over each other. It's more closely coordinated.
well, then why don't we take any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, does the board want to have a question?
Make a motion to approve the Phoenix Rising contract.
Second,
Second,
discussion from the board? All right, all in favor?
I just have one question. Sorry. One thing I would like to ask is if this entire contract, including the scope of services and price information, could be put on our Muni codes location where we have contracts, so we can refer to this.
Just like.
Thank you. Thank you.
thanks, Craig.
That's the best way to go back and look at these things. Thank you. That's my only comment.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
I
Opposed? That motion passes.
All right, thank you all. We look forward to working with you.
Absolutely.
Getting the plan.
All right, next up on the agenda is Mr. Knudsen's Symposium Scholarship to the Energy Environment Symposium. I have to say, Mr. Knudsen, I am very pleased that you want to attend.
I do want to give up the time for it. I am willing to pay for my lodging and transportation. So what the people that put this on charge, it costs them about $650 per participant to put it on. They're willing to grant us a scholarship, but they're asking if the town would give a portion of that $197.50 as a grant to help supplant their costs for my attendance. So that's the ask to the board.
All right, questions for Mr. Knudsen? Yes.
I'm not sure how this benefits the town, Dave, because oil and gas really isn't our problem. So I think I would probably vote against us. Water is our issue right now. The town of Paonia will never be drilled for oil or gas, and we have no effect on greenhouse gases at all. Except for when Bill Bruner wanted me to be appointed to the council, he gave me a list of 20 things that he wanted me to do for the town. Last one was to make Paonia carbon neutral. Something I haven't been able to accomplish quite yet. I'm just not sure why we're chasing the energy game.
Should I ask?
Yeah, please.
Essentially, several years ago, this was a big issue for us. And we signed on to a number of letters, which was a concern about the watershed and the effect of oil and gas on the watershed, on our ditches, on the water going down the North Fork. And there was a lot of coordination with CHC and the Conservation Center on those very issues. So that has kind of tamped down in the last few years. But the big thing that's coming up right now is whether the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission is actually going to start considering impacts on health and safety, which is exactly what our citizens have been talking about here. Is they want to make sure our ditches are free of those kind of things. The terror ditches had a lot of problems with that too. So the town of Paonia can help with these kind of issues by being a local government that can speak up on those kind of things. I was designated right after I came on the board 5 years ago, to be the local government designee for that. So I've been watching the emails and what the hearings are, looking for things that are possibly might impact our valley. The main thing has been the watershed, and I've worked closely with Natasha and also the people at the Conservation Center on that. So I wanted to get further educated because most of my education has been on the conservation side and on the environmental side. This one looks like it's more on the industry side, which would be more of a balance. That's why I wanted to go. And also be better represented about.
And I would echo what Dave said, because I was the designated oil and gas representative on the board prior to Dave coming on. And I had a background, having worked with the Endocrine Disruption Exchange and building their oil and gas, the health effects of oil and gas database for them. And so I was very focused on the health, the environmental health portion of that and its effects on human health and wildlife health. But also we have to be very concerned about our airshed and any drilling that happens above us, that those chemicals come down and blow upon us. And it also affects the health of our environment and the health of all the wildlife that happens around us. And the town of Paonia, I have gone and testified. I've testified at the local hearings that they had up in Gunnison on this issue, representing the town of Paonia. And having the town of Paonia have a voice at those hearings is very, very important, because Gunnison Energy and those people, they can vote, they can come and drill. They may not be drilling in our county, but they're drilling in our airshed and in our watershed. And we need to have a voice, because those chemicals and those things do not pay attention to county borders. So we need to have a voice at the table. And more education is always better. That's one of the main things that I did when I was working at the Endocrine Disruption Exchange. I went and learned everything I could about the oil and gas industry, the chemicals they use, the processes they use, and it was incredibly beneficial when I went then to look at the health effects. Anything else?
I was just gonna add, so I looked at a little bit of the agenda for this, and it looks very interesting. And I'm wondering, because I want to back up too, because I was heavily involved with the research management plan draft that the BLM has put forth, and it's dormant right now. But if it comes back in the shape it's in, they want to drill everything up there, open everything to leasing. So I do think we have a vested interest in understanding. I'd like to, I don't know if you haven't been following the BLM through Citizens for Health Community, but that would be great too as a liaison. It's been quiet. So what I would like to see when you are there is if you can glean the things that would most affect us here and report back on what the OGCC is doing in terms of, I think in this case, trying to reduce the fugitive methane, which is a big deal here. And I know Citizen for Health and Community is really concerned because we're one of the hot spots with climate change is in this part of Colorado. So maybe keep your ear to the ground to what is going on with that in your reporting back would be very helpful.
Well, I have a track record reporting back to, at least for the parks.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I guess what I meant was like more focused on what we could be facing when they, from the water and, yeah.
So,
Thank you.
citizen comment on this subject? All right, seeing none. Someone, anything else from the board? Yes, Fred.
I'd like to comment on the permitting. One of the things that the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission has been doing for the last, since its inception, is they're an industry board. And what we want to do is make it more citizen oriented and get it to the point where they can't just get automatic permits. And permitting is the biggest thing about it. They do an incredible amount of destruction. Unfortunately, I've worked in the industry. I know exactly what they do. I worked in North Dakota in places like Paonia, very small towns. They had no idea what was coming, and the trucks come in, they destroy the roads. They bring in hundreds, if not thousands of people into the area and set up trailer homes. And the oil companies can afford to do it. And all of a sudden you're stuck. You have this massive impact. You have to build schools, you have to build more facilities, sewer plants. All that stuff comes in. This isn't just the oil and gas. It's the impact on the communities. And that should be considered as well on permitting. And so far, I've seen absolutely nothing about that for oil and gas permitting. The reason we've got the reprieve is the West Texas oil fields have a lot of gas. And it's much, much cheaper to drill there. They don't have the challenging terrain and they have all the materials there. The weather's better too. So, and that's coming to an end. That what do they call it? That action down there is pretty much shutting down. Another thing we have to worry about is the methane capture. Here it's mainly gas that they're drilling for, but they don't have the pipelines. So that means we're going to have a tremendous amount of pipeline construction done. As it is right now, we have one large pipeline that goes over the hill to the Colorado River. And then there's another that goes to New Mexico. We're probably looking at 3 to 4 in this area if they decide to come back here and drill. And that's a massive disruption of the environment and our watershed. And I'm concerned about that.
Anything else? Can we get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the amount requested for trustee Knudsen to participate in the oil and gas forum.
Have a second.
Second.
Any get further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next up is the SIPA audio upgrade. Mr. Valentine.
We are sitting along.
We are. Look at this.
My apologies, I did not get this on. I didn't even know it was on the agenda. And I sort of climbed out of the grave.
She was gonna be within the chat.
Climbed out of the grave a few days ago and sent this out, and then my wife said, "Oh, that's good, it's on the agenda." I thought. So would you like me to sum this up briefly?
Yes.
Okay, so the problems were board conversations hard to hear by the audience, hard to hear by Zoom participants, hard to hear on meeting recordings, sort of the same thing. And when two people talk, the mic signal completely breaks down into garbled noise. The existing setup is not able to deal with new configurations, relocations of stuff that's not flexible. So what I did was contact local municipalities. They did not have systems that were anything we want to spend money to emulate. So then I did searches for best conference meeting cameras, but Mary said she knew of some folks at Region 10 Colorado who had this great system that focused in on speakers and had good audio. So I called Courtney Rodney there, who's the administrator at their facility, and said, "So what do you have?" And she said, "It's this thing called OWL." and sits about this high, and it has 8 microphones at the bottom, bunch of speakers, but it has a camera on the top with a lens that does a 360-degree picture of the entire meeting. And it has each one of the units has a computer on board, which first will do AI learning of what we do and who's speaking and all that kind of stuff. But it also will isolate a speaker out of that panoramic view, and it has potential to frame 3 of those speakers, but also to focus on as many speakers as necessary. It's very slick. Very, very, everybody has commented that this is a big breakthrough in this sort of media camera. So I interviewed Courtney. I looked at reviews. They were very positive. I have a link here to a good, very late review, but it's a really nice presentation of what's, why would you do this? And then I attended some live demo meetings from the company that produces these. So it has the 360-degree view. It'll dynamically switch between them. And it has a phone app. It'll do things like exclude the TV screen, because that's activity and a sound source that we don't want to pay attention to. We don't want to have somebody on the TV speaking to themselves. So it can ignore certain areas. It can do all kinds of things. You set up the settings on the phone app. Optimal range is 8 feet for audio and video, but it can function out to about 18 feet. And so each owl can take an auxiliary microphone. I was used to having another cable there and there. We'd probably position the 2 units here and then have the auxiliary microphones go out in those directions. One ostensibly for the podium. So that it can do 2 of them together. They talk to each other. They merge all their functions together. Again, like I said, very clever, very advanced kind of setup. So, okay, what's kind of nice is the host computer laptop over there could be the whole deal plugs into that. And as far as Zoom is concerned, it's a camera. That's all. And so the connection to Zoom is very, very simple. All the rest of it happens out here, and then Zoom picks up that signal and does everything that the owls tell it to do. That's quite nice. Okay, so details. I have a spreadsheet here with all the bits and pieces. I'm proposing 2 little end tables here that would give us the ability to sort of position them so that they're an optimal distance from each person, and get them off these tables. So I also proposed a digital audio converter. It's a technical thing. What that does is it's a way better way to turn the signal from the laptop over there into a signal that speakers can understand. And if you read the technical papers and reviews and stuff, a good high-end set of speakers like Klipsch or there's a bunch of brands out there, will give you more detail and clarity as sort of audio terms for it. And that's our problem. If we had more detail and clarity, people in the audience and people on Zoom could probably hear that much better. So the speakers would only have to do with this audience here.
Right.
Okay, so there's a big piece of this that is insofar, I think, ignored, and that's I put in 22 acoustic panels.
Yes.
This room is terrible, and almost all the rooms where they have meetings like our meeting are terrible. I don't know how you can hear it, but I can hear a tremendous echo right now as I speak. And I don't think I need to really demonstrate, but if I were to clap, we could probably hear a couple of little echoes and reverbs going on. That's the kiss of death as far as a good clear signal. And if you listen to the Zoom, it makes it much worse. Sounds like you're inside of a, big can. So I proposed that we buy a bunch of acoustic panels. Most of the manufacturers have instructions on where to put them. And that would be a big part of it. Then if we have speakers from the host laptop out to the audience, probably replacing those, I'm not sure what's up there already. We could get around the feedback issue with acoustic panels. That would help. Okay, so I looked at a lot of little details and things, but that is pretty much the summation. So there really was a sort of clear single solution here. There's some weaknesses. It's not out of sight, out of mind. That's a step backward. But I'm looking at this from the point of view, what are the problems we're trying to solve? And if we make some compromises, but really solve that problem, I think that's the way to go. So a lot of reviewers talk about that. It will sit right here and they'd be sort of there. But people get used to them. They're not practical. Their website shows them hanging from a lecture hall ceiling. But when you inquire more deeply, they want them hanging down to about 7 feet, which is even more intrusive. That's not a solution. So when Tom and I talked about that, we were saying, oh yeah, we'll just mount them on the ceiling. But it's not good. The images of the individuals, you could go on this demo and see, they're not as razor sharp as a good camera plugged into your laptop. Because the computer on each owl is extracting a frame of a speaker from that really big image and then sort of blowing it up. So but they're okay. The audio is terrific. That's the problem we're trying to solve. So there would be exposed cables and the little tables. But the whole system would be very portable, very flexible, very movable. And for smaller meetings, we could use one quite easily, just unplug it, and the owls understand it. You don't have to do anything. All right, so next I need to determine installation costs. That's not on the spreadsheet. And for speakers and for the panels, I need to do a site visit to Region 10 with Courtney Rodney, who has offered to give me a grand tour of what their system looks like. We could see about their positioning, their cables, etc. And then, so installation costs, trip to Region 10 in Montrose, and research positioning of the acoustic panels. Okay, so with that, any more questions or? I haven't time to digest.
I was just wondering, is it possible for us to get on the Region 10 website and watch one of their meetings on our computer and see it in action as a YouTube view?
I would think, yeah,
Probably,
if they'll privilege us to attend.
yeah.
Well, I just was thinking as me sitting here looking at a YouTube video, like we, like people do of our meetings, so I could see how people watching it later remotely, how is it? And I'm assuming they are doing Zoom or they're recording
They
their
are.
meetings and posting them?
Yeah, because I attend their meetings remotely,
Yeah,
so
I should be able to.
I can find out if they're recorded. I mean, that's easily enough, and they
Yeah.
can send you a copy of one of their meetings.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
And it's a hybrid like we do, because they have people on Zoom,
Mhm.
and then they have people sitting in a room.
That'd be a great test for me to do.
There's another option. If you go to Owl Labs, their website, they have a weekly set of meetings where potential customers or users can just, register and log in, which is what I did. And you can be your Zoom attendee and then watch them do their sales pitch, on the Owls.
Well, I would like to see somebody actually using it like
This
us,
meeting,
as see it in action, to see, is it as good as they say? Anyway, so I'll.
I will contact Region 10 and see if I can get you a link. Anybody who wants.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the acoustic panels are essential. It's a great idea. I've been aching for that for a while. How does this fit in the budget? Where are we at?
Oh, I didn't say. We have 6,500 roughly, and this comes out to 4,800 with no installation costs. So really well under budget. And I was fairly extravagant with the digital audio converter and the speakers. I threw lots of panels in there, but we have room for probably several more. So we're in good shape.
I just want to mention that I have experience with the OWL. Rio Grande County uses it. They're fabulous. And I can't say enough good things about them. I've tried to sell them to other entities because I think they're the only way to go for a big group like this to be on Zoom. But people come up with all these reasons why they think that if someone goes in front of it, but it's intelligent. And it will zoom in on the speaker. It even will hold if there's a conversation going on between, say, a commenter and the board, it will hold both of those pictures. It's amazing. And the video quality is the same video quality that most of us have on our computers. It's not high resolution TV, but as John said, when you don't expect that when you're going to a Zoom meeting. I think they're amazing.
Just to follow. So who did you say was using it? And
Rio
we,
Grande County uses it. So if you go on and watch one of their own meetings, you'll see it in action.
that's all I really want to see is now. Yeah, thank you.
Anything else from the board?
Mayor,
Yes.
Nick. Hi, everyone. I would just echo, no pun intended, what Leslie said. A lot of our clients use the OWL, and it really is great when you have a boardroom like this. So yeah, I think that would work well for the town.
All right, thank you. Work, John.
Thank you.
So I guess move forward, go ahead, get the rest of this done, and I don't know, shall we charge him with purchasing this?
Is the $5,000 limit, we're under that?
Oh.
The full size, I wanted to make sure that.
So we have a dedicated $6,500 from the SIPA grant that is for this specifically.
I was talking about our own internal purchasing.
Right, but we can, make a motion to allow John to go ahead and purchase up to $6,500 from the SIPA grant. If we so want.
It's in the budget. We've already.
I know.
Right. I'd like to make a motion. We authorize John to go ahead and move forward on this, especially that he gets it done by March 28th, when I will be on Zoom.
The guinea pigs. Did you have a second?
I need to do the booth panel, but just
We have a motion in a second for John to move forward to the $6,500 limit.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Congratulations, John. Go spend some money. All right, next up is approval of a resolution for 2023 establishing roles and responsibilities of town committees. Nick and Leslie, this is your show.
Lower. So this is follow-up to our training to implement new policies. And I want to explain in my memo that I did get into detail, and maybe it was a little preachy about what committees should and should not be doing. And it wasn't because I don't think the board already knows. It's because I have talked to I think 2 or 3 citizens that are on these committees who are having a very hard time understanding that they do not supervise staff. And what I really want to emphasize is these committees are valuable because they can recommend, consider issues and recommend to the board policy and plan direction. They can be a good sounding board for that. But what they're having a hard time understanding is they are not a staff entity. The chain of command goes trustees, administrator, police chief, and staff. So I went into a lot of detail so it would be very clear, because I literally had a conversation with one person that went on for about an hour, and it was really hard to make that shift. So the main differences is with the airport committee, which actually I think that scope was just adopted. Some of those things on there come in direct conflict with the IGA that you also already have signed on to. It doesn't mean that that advisory committee stops advising you about the airport. It does clarify that they are not, as an entity, solely responsible for the airport master plan. If they want to do a master plan, we have to do that with Delta County. It's pretty clear if you read the IGA, we have to coordinate those things. We can't go off on our own and do our own airport thing. So the language now is more general. And some of those committees went into very, as you saw in the packet, very specific things. They don't need to do that. You don't need to say that you get to take people on tours. You can just take people on tours. So I think what we're going to do is go back and redo those resolutions. So it's very clear the value of these committees and that they do, I think something that's really important that they could do every January is sort of report to you what they did in the past year and what their goals are for the next year, so they can have a discussion directly with the board to make recommendations. You can ask them if an airport, let's use the airport for an example. You're concerned about, I don't know, a cell phone tower interference with the airport. You can ask them to come in and talk to you about that. So those are the proper roles of committees, and they are valuable. And I want to emphasize that we're not getting rid of committees. We're redirecting committees to a more traditional role in government, which is a valuable role. And if Nick has anything to say, I will defer to him.
Sure. Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Leslie. All I'd say is the more traditional committees, just to use that term, would typically have some sort of structure that would benefit the board by having a consensus majority vote on items that were then recommended to the board. So that's one of the things that you've probably seen in this resolution. Typically, advisory committees would have, and I'm not talking about, you'll see that the resolution distinguishes between board committees, the 2 members of the board that are on committees, and citizen advisory committees. The citizen advisory committees typically have an established number of members as well. And you would see typically that they would be an odd number, so you could reach that consensus majority before a representative of that committee, for example, would come into the board and present that advisory committee's recommendation to the board. So that's another thing that you'll see in the resolution. I just want to make sure to highlight that for you so that you can properly evaluate whether that would work for the board.
Okay, questions, comments?
So I have a couple of questions. So right now, we have the ordinance established citizen advisory committees, and then we have the town trustee committees. So that's a little bit of an amalgamation of both that need to be separated to some extent in our decision making. So one of the questions I had is that in your approach here, you have pretty much transferred the responsibilities of the advisory water committee, which was established by ordinance and now is no longer in existence, to the water sewer trash, which is a 2-member trustee committee. So when I read this, it looked as though that you were suggesting that that be more formalized so that there is more of a membership, more membership than simply the 2 trustees, as had been in the old ordinance?
Well, I did not understand that. I had asked that question and I was told that the one committee was kind of the same committee. So if there's a separate board, 2-member committee. I mean, we could sort that out, but
It's just that the advisory water committee, which was very formal, and we had to have two in-town representatives, at least one out-of-town representative. The water sewer trash committee is that committee that has its own. You have the list. It is a 2-member trustee committee, not a more formal citizens. This is it. So this is the water sewer trash committee, which has subsumed the advisory water committee. And there is no membership requirement other than 2 trustees.
so right now we do have citizens meeting in the water committee.
Right, and I'm not suggesting that you don't, it's just that it's no longer the formal committee that it was. And the way this is worded, it sounds like there was an attempt to try to formalize who could actually be sitting and voting on consensus to take to the trustees.
So
So it's going to have to be a hybrid.
Because I got the wrong information.
It could be a hybrid, but okay.
I would just, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we misunderstood that aspect, and I now understand that the water sewer and trash committee was a board committee rather than a citizen advisory committee. And I'll just say before Dave speaks that it wasn't the intention either to really formalize, because we heard his comments about the water advisory committee. So it wasn't necessarily our intention to formalize that committee. We like that sort of, and I know the board likes that kind of town hall setting that the water advisory committee could potentially bring and to potentially provide advice to the board. So yeah, so these things are certainly open for discussion. We just wanted to get something in front of you, for discussion purposes.
Dave?
So historically, the town committees were consisted only of 2 trustees, and they did not have regular meetings. What they did is that the board would either direct them to do something, in which case they pursue it, much like John's pursued our speaker problem in the building, or the staff would request the committee to do something for them. So the committee was simply reactive. It wasn't something that happened regularly. The advisory water committee failed to fulfill its obligations under resolution or under ordinance because it could never get the right number of members together. And that's a problem in this town. And we had no members from in town. We had Bill Bruner appointed, but he never showed at a single meeting. So we had no representation from in town. We had lots of representation from out of town. And I kept that committee going, the advisory water committee, as a citizens committee, just to have the citizens have input. But I did not expect to formalize that as any sort of ordinance or resolution, because we're just not, section 1 in this from H through K is non-viable. Just from the experience I had with the AWC.
I would like to correct one thing, Dave, is that when you were on the board, that may have been the case. When I was seated on the board in 2018, the committees were different in that there were 4 standing committees, and those standing committees met regularly every month. So they weren't reactive as such, but they were still tasked with doing things. For example, if we had bids that came in, the Public Works Committee would take a look at those bids, read through them and then give a direction, their recommendation to the board as to which one they would recommend to the board. But they did meet every month, so it wasn't just a reactive.
And did you have a full agenda every month, or did you just have an empty meeting occasionally, but were required to meet?
No, we discussed things every month. I don't know there was a formalized agenda for every committee meeting every month, but we met every month.
Could you for everyone, could you reiterate what the 4 committees were back then? There was GAP.
There was public safety. There was GAPS, which was government, public safety. There was parks, streets, parks. There was personnel, Personnel and finance, and then water and sewer track.
Public Works.
So Public Works Committee. Yeah,
Just to piggyback on what you said, Mary, when I first came on the board, I remember at the end of the meeting, each of the committees had a
Yeah.
report. Sometimes the committee would say, we have nothing to report because they hadn't met. So it was semi-regular. Some committees weren't as active as others, but basically every meeting, at the end of the meeting, we asked for those committees to report. And they typically tried to meet in between the meetings, at least once in a while.
and that's the thing is because the board meets every other week. Sometimes they would meet and have something to report, and then the next meeting they hadn't met because they'd already met that month, so they would have nothing to report.
One of the things, our main problem is with water and sewer is we're not getting everything done. And I think a committee can actually, if they meet regularly and work on water issues, we can get a lot of good out of that. And I would propose that we have a set number of members and that they meet. And if they don't meet, we replace them. Just kind of like how we do it with town council. We need to get the work done, and committees are a really good way of being more informal and not taking up the entire town meeting with discussion. The Parks Committee, we get a lot done in an hour, half an hour sometimes, and it's fairly informal, but we do get a lot of issues up in front of people. People talk about them, we throw them around, and then we come up with something that we want to have presented to the committee. And I think that's really important. Maybe we put a little more emphasis on regular and formalized meetings.
Just one more thing I like to add. What I've seen evolve with the Parks Committee is we have 3 or 4 citizens that typically show up to every single one of our meetings because they're passionate about the parks. They want to know what's going on and they want to give us input on it. So it's kind of a more informal way for people to be able to do that. But again, we're trying to bring things in. That's why we do the reports that we do. We say, here's what happened at the meeting, and we want you to weigh in about what we need to do next, or what is a policy decision that has to go to the board. So we're not tripping over ourselves. We're trying to make decisions in the meeting. In the law enforcement one, it's a little different because some of that gets a little more confidential and can get touchy. And so I see what we're doing with law enforcement now as being more of a sounding board and also feedback to Matt about what's going on in the community that he may not be aware of.
yes.
I may be throwing a wrench in the works, but I really thought that the GAP committee, Governmental Affairs, was very helpful to the town, and we don't have that. There's nothing replacing governance with our existing committees. And that was Governmental Affairs, Public Safety.
Correct.
So I would like to suggest we reinstate that committee. It would subsume, I believe, the Public Safety Committee.
Yeah.
It might become one and the same, but that committee did all the work on the ADUs. And we had a really nice report from them. So I'm just throwing that out there because I think we have a gap. I'm a little concerned about the committees. I think we've been a little too loosey-goosey, and we do need to get ourselves reined in as to what we can and can't do as 2 trustees, that we are not speaking for all trustees in a committee meeting. One thing I'd like to get figured out, because I did not stay for the Sewer Water Trash Committee last Wednesday because Mary and Dave were already here. So what I'd like to know is on page 83 of the packet, what constitutes public notice for all of us to know if a third member shows up, a third board member shows up? Does it have to be on the bulletin board where we designated our official public notice, or are there, I know Sam and I talked about it a little bit, and I read through that and I still was confused. So
If I can.
Yes,
That's what I've been reading today is open meetings, open records, and Nick will tell me if I'm wrong for sure. Public meetings or your committee meetings are noticed on the town website, which does cover timely notice. But because you guys aren't doing any formal actions, there can be no formal actions there, it's just discussing general matters of the community. The Colorado Supreme Court said in that case, when it's just talking about things that are going on in the community, but not actually making plans towards things, you have to notice it, but it doesn't have to be formally noticed and agendized like a town board meeting does. So, and that's just something that the Colorado Supreme Court just did. That's sort of the OML thing that I just got done reading was. So committees aren't formal enough for it to have the same noticing.
And as a follow-up to that, so it is, as long as you have put the date and time on the calendar, that is enough notice to have multiple council members. Okay, thank you.
It's a nice to know.
Yes. Thank you. And I have one last thing on this whole topic here, which is going to have to be another discussion. But on page 88, it's listed that the trustees will be responsible for hiring and supervising the chief of police. I, for one, would like to have a lot more training on what that means, if that is going to be the case for us, because I have no idea what we do as supervising the chief of police. So I'm putting that out there that some guidance would be very helpful.
Especially, because I know prior, when I was supervising the chief of police, I was acting on behalf of the board in that respect. And yeah, guidance was really would have been helpful. Yeah, so because the police is really the biggest liability in town, and having proper supervision is really, really important. Yeah, listen.
It sounds to me that we might want to do another workshop to go over these board committees and develop the purpose of them. Because I think that's where there were 3 committees that I was aware of, just because I tried to research what the committees were doing and not doing it. Sam sent me a bunch of documents and there were some things for some committees and not for others. That we could just go through and define what those committees do. So it's clear to everybody, because the problem has been the kind of the, what did you call it? Loosey-goosey. And making sure that, a committee doesn't overstep the chain of command or and that or speak to the board, and that everything comes back to the board for decisions. So that's sounds like we may have to do some more work there.
So, yeah.
When we talked about meetings in general, we said we could combine things, like could one of our bi-monthly meetings start with an hour and a half work session on that, rather than setting a special work session that say, hey, the second meeting in April is going to be the first hour and a half on committees, and we're going to hammer out the roles. Citizens can give us input on what they think the role should be, but we can also figure out what that is. And then we go into our regular agenda with disbursements and the rest of that stuff. That's one thing I suggest instead of a special meeting.
Yes, Dave.
So Leslie did a request to the committees for what their current duties are. I'm not sure who turned in what, but I do notice that on this resolution, the finance committee and the water sewer trash committee are fairly well elucidated, but the other committees are really sketched in briefly. And I think that's something we need to pursue.
We've been writing minutes, we've been not doing duties.
Right. Yeah. And I think a move back toward the 4 committees we had previously, I think would be a good move, because I think that was really a good structure that we had previously and worked well, because it seemed to cover all the bases. But I agree. And are you suggesting, Dave, that we meet at 5? Start a meeting at 5?
Earlier, yeah, we could do that.
It would be nice if we would have a dinner break or something there, because starting at 4:30 or 5 o'clock and then going until whenever we finish our board meeting,
That makes no sense.
it makes no sense. And it really gets a killer for the board.
I was actually thinking of trying to compress our regular business in our first hour and a half. I was working on that special meeting, and then we take a break. And then, in other words, we start at 6:30, we go till about 8. we take a break and then we do the rest of our business and try to keep that, 8:15 to 9:30 really tight on the things that are required, and that's it. We don't have to have a special meeting, we don't have to be early,
That would be nice.
because we're doing pretty good tonight. I mean, it's 7:43 and we're pretty far along on the agenda.
Right, it is.
We're getting better on being crisp.
We need to argue more. We can slow down.
Let's go back to the oil and gas thing.
Get me started. That was my first.
So, well, we could try. I mean, we could take our next meeting would attempt to do that. Or what's our agenda?
March 14th. I think you'd probably do better to maybe the second meeting of the month for that, because you've already got quite a few things on your March 14th,
Okay.
including a public hearing.
Oh,
So
That's why I threw it out as a either first or second meeting that we try that in April. Because this is not, I mean, what's gonna happen between now and then for the committees? Is it crucial? Wait that long?
probably.
What's the urgency, I guess is what I'm asking.
How long we went with no committees.
Exactly.
Yes.
Nothing done, so.
So if we designate a certain, say, the first meeting in April, then we can really work on keeping that agenda really concise and down to necessary.
Okay. I'd like to move that committees who have not outlined their duties do so prior to the end of March. And at the first meeting in April.
Let's do that as two.
Okay, one thing. All committees who have not outlined their duties have that done by the end.
Second that.
All right. Further comment from the board? Anything in the public? All right, yes, thanks.
Sorry, can I jump in here?
Yes, please.
I just noticed you guys keep going back to the first of the month, and first of the month is traditionally, and you have your department heads come and do their reports and stuff. That's one of, so either maybe consider, yeah, because that's something that can cut out quite a bit of time if you're not gonna have your staff reports in there. I'm just worried you guys are, beginning of the month traditionally, any place is when lots of stuff is all of a sudden come up that has to be dealt with. I think you guys would be better off maybe trying it out second. Just
So it's a thing having their duties outlined by the 1st of March.
Oh, that's all we're doing. All we're doing is we're just saying, get your duties in, submit them to the clerk by the end of.
By the end of March.
That's all we're asking.
Right, yeah, so it's not on the agenda.
I thought you guys were aiming for the first of April.
All we're trying to do is get us off our butts to write our duties.
All right. So we have a motion. Did we get a second on that?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. All right, so we have a motion on the table that all committees that have not outlined their duties do so by the end of March. All right. All in favor? Opposed? All right, motion passes. Now do your second.
Okay, second motion is I moved at the second meeting in April. Sam, does that work? But the second meeting of April start at 6:30 with an hour and a half work session on committees.
All right.
6:30.
Normal meeting time, we do an hour and a half session on committees. We will have had the duties by then. Once we look at those duties, we might decide, now maybe we want to do 4 committees and combine this and shift the duties around, but an hour and a half, if we've seen the duties in advance, should be enough time for us to really get down and make some decisions about how we do it.
Will I need a sleeping bag?
It will be fun.
No, lots of.
We can argue on a lot of stuff.
before that, were there written down duties of the previous 4 committees that we could have in front of us
I
too?
don't think we ever,
Michelle might have some gaps.
Michelle probably has something for gaps.
Just thinking that might be helpful to see what they used to be doing.
Yeah.
This different
Yeah,
configuration.
Michelle might have.
Sam sent me everything she could find,
Right.
so.
Did it have the old ones? Film committees?
You've seen everything I've read.
Really? Okay, then the answer is no.
Yeah.
I was a member of GAPS when I was on the board and we didn't have a formal outline.
And I don't, yeah, I don't think we have it for Public Works either. Okay. All right, anything from the public? All right, we have a motion and a second for on the second meeting of March.
April.
Oh, sorry, April. Second meeting in April, starting at 6:30, we do an hour and a half work session. Okay, it's all in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, next is our update on the administrator search.
I can tell you, we received 18 applications. The last one came in on the 24th. And Leslie has gone through and sort of culled out the ones that she thought were worthy of doing an initial follow-up. I'm in the process of doing the same thing. And I don't know, we have not set a time or figured out how to do that initial interview of our larger group in order to determine and how to determine which ones could ultimately be finalists. Let me just reiterate what we did before. So we had 3 previous town administrators went through the list. We got 24 applications last time. They went through and gave us a list of about 8, if I remember correctly, 8 of the applicants that they thought were worthy of some semblance of, actually, they gave us less. They gave us, I think, 4 names, and they actually decided who should be finalists. We all added several others to be interviewed to that list. Then the trustees did interviews of, I think we did 8 people, 6 or 8.
We did. a lot.
I think it was 8. And then we determined from that 8, who did we want to have as finalists? We chose 4, 1 dropped out. So then we had our public 3 finalists. So we're at the point now where it's Leslie, John, and myself going through the 18 applications, kind of whittling those down to who, a smaller group. But I don't know if we then, I'm looking at Leslie for your advice. Once the 3 of us kind of put our list together and see who we have all agreed on and kind of talked about why we want someone or not, we could conceivably have, I think you might have had 10 people. I'm just throwing out a number. 10 that you thought were worth discussing some more.
Yeah.
I think, were you thinking the 3 of us could discuss the ones that, because there are definitely some that I know I do not want to interview. And it's easy, but
Yeah, there's, I think when you did your initial interviews before, you did hour-long intervieus, and
No, it was only about a half an hour.
Right.
Actually,
yeah.
yeah, 20 minutes to a half.
Yeah.
Because I only do half-hour screening interviews, because you always go on a half-hour where they might continue.
Right.
And that was all it was. It was pretty,
It was, yeah.
So it's really up to the board. Do you all want to be in on the screening interviews, or do you want to entrust that to the personnel? And then,
depends on how many.
Yeah, I think it depends on how many. Yeah, if it's like 8 or so, between 5 and 8, I think, yeah, we can do that easily enough. Yeah. All right. Dueling days. Who wants to
Dueling
go
days.
first?
Okay, so I thought that last time around, there was far too many layers of interviews, and you have to some extent carpe diem. You have to just seize the day, or you're going to lose people that don't want to go through endless intervals. So interviews, I'd like to see those, my personal preference, see those compressed a bunch. Don't just have the staff do interviews and the dogs of Paonia check them out, and everybody was this whole list of people. So simplify the process. I'd also like to see via email and confidential all of the applications so that I can run background checks on them.
Well, shouldn't we have the police do the background checks on
Pardon?
them? Shouldn't we have the police do the background checks?
Yeah, well, that's fine, but Ken Nightmare came through and nobody did a background check on him. It took me a half hour to figure the guy was toxic. So it would be another way of preventing the Ken problem if I ran a background check.
I think you're talking about a different kind of background
Right.
check than the police.
Yeah.
I'm talking about,
That's a good thing to do.
yeah, and I'm willing to do that for all the applicants. If there's 10 like you think that are preferred, then I would run a background check on them.
Okay,
And then I trust the personnel committee to whittle down from there.
yeah.
I remember that several of the board members wanted to look at all the applicants, advocate for which one might be added or not. And so I think what might be better is to, or one idea is that those who want to see the entire pool, great, they have access to that. Because they might want to advocate for the people that are doing the final winnowing, I want to call it, down to the finalists. Well, I'm not so sure whether all of us need to do that. You know, the big question I have is, how does the caliber of this group compare to the last?
And the other thing,
In other words, like we, you know, when you looked at the paper, very first group we had, and I'm asking this of John and what's her name?
God, stay your silence, it's a problem.
Paige, I'm sorry. If John and Paige could give me an idea of just throwing mud against the wall, is this a fairly qualified group compared to the last group? Or is it?
Have you looked through them all? I've just,
Not all.
okay.
No.
Yes and no. So, and I say that because on paper, yes, there are quite a few, but as I learn things, they don't look as good. So we have less applicants, but I think we still have about the same number of applicants that I think are worthy of a second look. To find out, are they who they say they are? Because we already know about that in some instances. And then that's a way to decide what to do there. But we have some applicants who have quite a bit of municipal experience. Wouldn't you agree, Leslie? I'd say even more so than before in that regard. We had people with a lot of experience before, but not necessarily as much municipal. So I think we have a little bit better experience as long as everyone's telling the truth.
Then the second thing I'd like is Dave doing the background check would really help us, because we had one candidate in the last round that we shouldn't have interviewed at all.
Right.
Once and his background check would have found that out.
But remember, you did not want to know. So this is what needs to be different. Because I knew something about an applicant, you all didn't want to know,
Yeah,
and we did it, and then I told you. So let's switch that.
yeah.
That's how I feel, that we should know ahead of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you should. There's one applicant in there that I also said. Yeah, because I know him. I wanted to disagree with Dave. In every applicant process that I've gone through for a department head or administrator or manager, you are not interviewing as much as other towns do. I mean, there's this process that I call it the beauty pageant process, where you go in for 3 days. And I'm not kidding, you are being interviewed by the Chamber of Commerce, by the, everybody all day long. And then they have these big public things. I personally think that the process that you used to interview was really good. It may have seemed like a lot of interviews, but I do think that your staff is going to give you a different perspective than you're going to have, because they have different relationships. So I'm going to advocate. I think your interview process was great. And it was, I think, enough for you to figure out whether, this was a go or not. And just from my standpoint, I have not been interviewed less than what you interviewed.
I did also, just for my kids, I have 2 kids who have interviewed for jobs within the last 3 years. And oh my God, just in the public world, what they have gone through and the number of interviews that they have gone through to get their jobs. I mean, they have gone through like 4 interviews to get their jobs. And this is out in the public world. This is not,
That's probably reflecting my background, and Leslie's probably right there, is that hiring computer engineers, hardware and software, you grab them when they're there. Because they're highly paid, they're highly skilled, they're highly fluid. They'll go right through. So, yeah, government's a slower process. It's not my world.
And you know that through that process, you discovered things that you would not have to discover if you had to have all parts of that process.
All right. So, yes.
One of the things I found most useful was the staff input. Because the staff has to work with the administrator. And no, we're not letting them pick their boss, but they have valid concerns. And we're not in the trenches, so I think that that's almost the most important thing for me.
Yes.
I was just, I think having the group of public do the interview too was very valuable. Because the one thing with this is we want technical expertise, but we really need emotional IQ as a town administrator. And that's where you put people in different scenarios and see how they do. That's just so important. And I thought what we did, and I've never done that kind of interviewing. I didn't have to do that in my career, but I thought it was great. We got a lot of various input and we realized we needed to rethink things.
And I also think, so it's a long, hard, harrowing day. Well, congratulations, town administrators have long, hard, harrowing days, and if they can't live through that, then they don't be a town administrator. So as far as winnowing it down, yeah, Dave.
But I just thought as a person that's on the board that makes the final decision, it was helpful for me to have as many touch points as I can with the candidates. So we had the paper, we had the screening, we had the presentations, then we had the final interview. So there were like 4 touch points that we had. So I want to see that number of touch points.
Okay, so I hear that you want to be part of the screening interviews.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so if you guys could winnow it down and we do the screening interviews.
do you, first of all, does anybody want to see all of the candidates at this point?
No,
Just curious.
yeah, just the
Okay.
ones.
All right, I'm just asking because that's ready now, and then the 3 of us can do our thing. I have an email in progress about my thoughts, and then once we come up with our list, kind of like our 3 volunteers did, then we can send you all those applications and we can plan on the next step. Is there something else in there we're missing?
No,
Is that everything if we do that?
oh, yeah, send them to Dave so that they can do the background.
Okay, yeah. And as soon as we then have our winnowed list, the 3 of us, then we could share that with everyone? Okay. Okay,
And I would suggest that we send a winnowed list to Dave, so he doesn't have to look at people that you know.
no, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this entire list, only the 3 of us have.
Okay,
We'll do the winnowed list to everyone and then everybody does their thing.
okay.
Does that work?
That's
What,
good.
do we want a deadline for that?
Oh, yeah, please.
So Monday? The 3 of us get our things in? And do we need a phone call between I think we do. I think the 3 of us need a phone call once we all see our
Yeah,
lineup.
because you have information that I don't have.
Right. Vice versa. So can we do that? Plan a phone call on Monday after we all get an email from each other? How's that for timing? Maybe I should look at what I'm doing Monday. See.
I'm not here, so I'll have to.
Yeah, sure. And Monday is the 6th. Okay, I'm good with that if you all are. Right? Wait a minute, what's today? Yes, Monday would be the 6th.
Time's flying.
Yep. Okay, so Leslie, if you want to choose a time, I'll tell you if I'm good or not on the 6th.
Is 3 o'clock gonna work? Do you think 3?
Oh, I think so. I think we'll be
Okay,
good.
we have we're gonna have a 1:30.
Okay, so we will call John and we could do a 3-way phone call. We'll call it 3. Okay. Great, and everybody get their stuff together. Okay, thanks, everybody. That helps.
Moving forward. All right, next is approval of intent to ask Senator Bennett Hickenlooper for congressionally directed funds. Well, it's like, several other super projects, actually. we're looking to buy the school. I attended a webinar and the average project is $2 million. And contacted the school and they would be very excited for the town to buy that building, $2.5 million. And so I suggest that we write our congressionally directed funds toward buying that school for $2.5 million. It would be a real boon to the town. I think we could do many, many things with it. If we had the property, then we would have the choice of what we would do with it. It would be in our court to develop it instead of it being at the mercy of whoever decides to pony forth the money. It would be in the school's best interest because they could get what they wanted for the building and they wouldn't have to fight with water towns, anything else in the process. So what does the board think?
Is this a water sewer project?
That was my original thought, was the water sewer project. It would have been for the sewer, replacing the sewer lines.
There's some problems with water sewer projects because you have to spend this money if you get it really quickly. And
Right.
that's why I suggested to Mary that instead of trying and figure out how we can fund our water sewer projects, that we look at buying land because you want to do affordable housing. And then the school can.
Because this money will not be available until fall of 2024. Because it has to go through the appropriations process. So it has to go through the budgetary cycle and then they have to do appropriations. So we would get the funds in February or in fall of 2024. So the school would have to agree to hold the land in abeyance until then. And we'll be meeting Monday at 1:30 to talk to them about that. And like I said, they're very excited about this prospect.
I bet they are.
Yeah.
It's off their lips. Sorry.
Yeah.
Do we know what the ongoing O&M costs are for that building?
No, I don't.
Because that's been somewhat of a white elephant. I know it was really falling apart bad, and then when they put the VOTEC stuff in there for the mines, they did a lot of improvements, roof, windows.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Converting it somehow into housing would be really difficult because of the lack of plumbing.
Well, and that's, yeah, and we would have to get money to do that, but we would have time to plan that. That's the thing. The building would be ours. If we decided to do affordable housing, fine. If we decided to move the town hall over there and the police department over there, fine. If we wanted to build a community center, fine. If we wanted to build a senior center, fine. We could do lots of different things with that building. We wouldn't have to decide today or in fall of 2024 what we wanted to do with it.
Do we have a staff recommendation on this?
Yeah, suggested.
Well, I don't think that we know enough yet to have a staff recommendation, but I do know that I think the most valuable thing that a government could do is buy land to hold for later. Because what happens with land, especially in a town like Paonia, where you watch the housing prices go skyrocket, you're not going to be able to buy land later and you're going to have more demands. And I think particularly because you're looking at affordable housing, you don't have to think in terms of if you're developing affordable housing that the town itself is going to be developing. If you've got a property like that, you can work with a developer to do it and have affordable housing. So I think it just opens up options that you don't have right now for affordable housing. You're going to have a hard time getting a developer to purchase land at market value and develop affordable housing in Paonia without town participation. Really hard.
Mike, do you know, have there been an inspection? Is there any asbestos in that building?
I do not know. These are questions we can ask at the meeting on Monday.
I have a little house that I've been having to deal with some asbestos issues, and I can tell you it's easy to get a sample taken and sent in. Because I just did it. It's because that would be my concern, is what I don't know when that building was built, and I don't know if it was built at a time when they might have used asbestos flooring.
It's amalgamation. It was the high school at one time. That's what the gymnasium is.
Yeah,
And then it's been built onto at different times.
I think we should be kind of
It's a good
careful
bet.
about what could be in there.
And I'll pretty much bet that lead paint is also.
Yeah, it goes way back, that building.
Yeah.
And these things aren't impossible to fix, but they can be expensive if it's extensive. And it all depends.
And I just wonder if there's any way to get some idea of what we might be faced with. I mean, if you leave everything in place, you're fine. It's when you start wanting to take things down that you find out that that's an asbestos containing material and it gets really expensive. So I don't know if the wall board could have asbestos, if there's, any way we could do get some kind of samples, walk through. I don't know, Rick, if you'd be comfortable looking
Well,
at,
here's the thing,
okay.
this has to be in by March 10th.
Well, can we walk through that building?
Well, you're not buying it now. You're only. You're just, we might do some sort of MOU that agrees, it would be nice to have with the school that says, we're gonna work together on this, and if we get money, then you do all your due diligence, but I don't know that you're gonna solve these kinds of very detailed questions in the next few
I'm
days.
just very concerned about the costs and if the school district would help pay for some of that and not just be on our shoulders if there's some awful thing that's found.
I think you've got a lot of options and time.
Right, but I don't have time to write
Okay,
the request. So that's what I'm asking for tonight is,
I'm just curious how the school district arrived at 2.5. Was there actually an appraisal done on that property? And that would help understand, did they just throw mud against the wall and say, we think it's worth 2.5? Or, because I'm thinking if we go for 2.5, if we have some flexibility on the price with the appraisal, then kind of things Paige is talking about can be also taken care of as far as remediation. So it's purchase and remediation of is the grant.
but then I have to do an itemized budget to do the remediation up, which means I have to come up with how much it's gonna cost to do all this stuff, which means all those questions have to be answered in the next 10 days.
Well, the total price to not exceed $2.5 million.
But that's not what I do when I have to write this proposal. It has to have an itemized budget. So if I put the word remediation in there, then I have to itemize that stuff out.
How about we ask for a reveal if they know there's asbestos in there?
Well, that's what that comes with the MOU with the school district. That is not part of this ask for the money.
Maybe that's where the flexibility comes in is when we're negotiating the school or the MOU says,
Yeah.
if this and this, then the price goes down to cover those costs.
Right, but the ask of our grant. Yeah.
And my follow-up question, do you know the asking price for the building? Is that based on an appraisal?
I don't know.
Because it might, with the realtor? I don't know.
Yes.
Does the realtor say those things? Give you why they priced it at that? Because I just wonder if that's a highball.
It would be very difficult to do a comparable price.
There's no comps.
Right, there's no cost. And
So basically, it's a scientific wild ass guess.
yes.
Mhm. Swagging it.
Wow, that's, yeah. Okay, public comment. Yes.
I know when I contacted the school board about 10 years ago, it was 1.2 million. And I thought it was 2.3, not 2.5.
I looked it up on the website.
Okay, and at that point, they said 30 grand a year to maintain, so it's lowball it. Give them 1.5.
We just take it. Anyways.
Okay, so,
I'd like to make a motion that we,
oh, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Corinne, I didn't see your hand up.
I talked with the realtor briefly, and they know quite a lot about it. So that would be a good point to start with, and that they are flexible on price from the realtor.
there's also an awful lot of land out there. If it's just investing in real estate, look at comparable parcels of land as well, large ones or in town or on the edges or, you know, small, large, medium size.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'd like to mention that there is a lot for sale in town. It's a building lot in town for $85,000. And I don't believe it has water and sewer on it.
So that's what it was today.
Yeah.
But it is on the market for that. And there's multiple buildings, building lots on that piece of property. It's quite large. I'd like to make a motion to give the approval for the intent to ask Senator Bennett and Hickenlooper for congressionally directed funds for this particular project.
We have a second.
Second,
All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Move ahead. Next is approval for intent to apply for a DOLA for a tier one DOLA EIF grant for the Doris sewer line. We have approval from DOLA to apply for this grant. It'll be approximately about 200,000, Leslie? The EIF grant for the Doris.
No, we can only apply for half of it.
Well, yeah.
And the
Well, the maximum we can apply for 200,000, which means we would have to come up with 200,000 matching fund. So how much is it?
I mean, it's only gonna be about 150,000.
So we would apply for 75,000.
Yeah, we're still waiting for, cost estimate on that. There's some question, as you learned today, that there's some water lines that are too close. But they're still trying to figure that out because what's mapped and what's under the ground are two different things.
So it's approximately a $75,000 grant then, and we have 75, we have more than that. We have $245,000 in the reserves in the sewer. So we have the matching funds for that.
I was just gonna say, there's $100,000 that, at my recollection, is in the sewer fund that's set aside for the Doris.
The Doris line was budgeted for at 100,000.
Yeah.
So we're covered for our matching funds, and so this will take it down.
We need to do the Doris line though, because it's so bad that we cannot get a camera down it, and that is not a good sign on a good.
So my question is, what would be the timing on that grant? Because I know they want to get in there really soon before it collapses.
We talked to Dana about this. We would apply if the grant is due by April 1st. And I believe he said August.
No, he said July. This was something I brought up with Dana because he really pushed us to do this. He wants us to preserve our cash. I just basically said, we'll apply for it, but if it looks like it's gonna collapse, we're gonna go fix it. And I mean, we can't wait around for DOLA's granting schedule. Because I am concerned about waiting that long, and I expressed that several times in this conversation.
Yeah.
Because we had hoped to have that thing underway in the spring as soon as ground.
So we're gonna try and get it written just as soon as we can.
Is it practical to know when a sewer collapses?
Oh, we'll know.
Well, but how will we know before it collapses? We don't want it to collapse. Because it's gonna cost us much more.
We know that it's in very bad shape.
Right. I think
So right now the engineers are putting together a bid package for it.
it's gonna.
So we're prepared to go.
Good.
And we may even put it up to bid and just wait
Right, exactly.
to award it based on if we've got time. But I was very clear with DOLA, even though Dana seemed to be focused on the money, that the most important thing is the sewer line that works.
But we're gonna try and get this grant through and save some of our money. if we can.
Is it earmarked for the Doris line only?
Yeah.
So if we got it, we can't use it if we have to spend our own money.
Dana,
Come on, play, hold up.
Can we reimburse what we've spent, or is that water it's through the sewer?
Let's try.
That's
no,
it.
they won't let you award the bid till.
I see no problem with applying for the money. Do you think it would conflict with any other applications we have to do?
Oh, no, because Dana heard the whole thing and he approved us applying.
Make a motion to approve the application for the DOLA grants for the Doris sewer.
All right, all in favor?
I oppose.
All right, that motion passes. No.
I have one thing, can we restrict heavy truck traffic down the doors?
I don't think heavy truck traffic goes down doors.
Well, what about the trash truck? That's.
Well, I can ask Corey
Yeah.
what
Just
impact he
bring it-
thinks that is. It's really deep.
Yeah.
It's like 16 feet
Oh,
deep. That's the other,
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
All right, so the next on the agenda is, so the next on the agenda is two grants that are gonna back to back. One's gonna be part of the matching for the other one. So one is a planning grant for DOLA in the amount of $25,000. And then the other one is a Colorado Water Conservation grant for the hydrological study for the Paonia and Crawford Springs. And that's gonna be approximately $200,000. So the 25,000 will be part of the match. We have a 25% match that we have to come up with on that 25 or 200,000. Which is about 50,000. So,
Did you want to tell them about the marvelous conversation?
oh, yeah, so the River District, we had a lovely conversation with the River District and they want to help us pay for this hydrological study.
Yeah.
And they don't have big bucks, but if they can match Dola's 25,000 with their 25,000, then we don't have to put out anything for this because we will have the matching funds to pay for this entire project.
Nice.
And this is the project that Crawford will partner with us.
Right, and the Delta County sign on.
We've gone over this a number of times now, so I don't see that this is it's a no-brainer.
Right.
But I do want to add one thing that we talked about today, because the more I'm hearing about spring redevelopment, the more I realize that we have to do this project to know how we're going to do spring redevelopment. We did come across, apparently the town, Dave, you may know about this, but they hired an engineer to do one of the spring new infrastructure beds, and we've got the engineering plans for that, but the town never went through on those. So, but the more I hear, the more I know that we have to know what's under there to do the right infiltration bed. So these things are going together, and we did have this long discussion today. We had CDPHE, DOLA, and the Colorado River District on the phone. So I think we made some headway, good headway in them understanding how important these projects are and how they interrelate.
Okay, can we get a motion
Make a
to,
motion to approve the intent to apply for the hydrogeological study of the Paonia Crawford Spring Complex.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, well, now we're to the mayor's report. Page 21. So, Paige, you had things you wanted to talk about in the mayor's report.
Right, well, I thought that we've done the grants, so we're on the 214 one.
Right.
And so the tier 2 EIF for 1 million for spring repairs, is that still in the works?
That, well, we talked to, again, Dana had said we can't apply for that, but we can't apply until August. Because our SRF is our loan is gonna be our match for that, and we won't be far enough along in our loan process to match DOLA's process. And so we have to wait till August to apply for that.
Okay. And then the LED sign, I just was wondering if you have any idea what that would cost.
You know, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm looking at the sign code, and the sign code is crazy. There's two things. So my original thought was to do this on the side of town hall, but we have two things in the sign code. One says you can only do a 1 square foot thing, and then it says a 50 square thing. So my thought was buy a big screen TV, put it in the window of town hall, get a computer, attach it to that TV, put a PowerPoint on that computer, and run a PowerPoint onto that LED TV. It's far cheaper than an LED sign. It's much more flexible than an LED sign, and you can change it so easily so that you have numerous things that are constantly going, advertising to the public.
But the sign code does say no flashing lights.
But you don't have to have a flashing light. It's a PowerPoint
But if
display.
it- if
Nothing
it's
moves.
changed, it flashes. You get a PowerPoint, when each slide goes, it changes, so that's a flash, and you get it. And unfortunately, the sign code precludes that.
We'd have to change the sign code. Rick's right.
Sign code
Yes,
is.
if you're gonna do this,
Yes.
you've got to start with the sign code, which is kind of like the street closure one. We can go have fun.
It's gonna be like, again.
Well, then what we could do is we could change it daily. So you could put up one sign a
If
day.
it stayed,
Yeah, it would stay, and then we change it every day.
yes, that's possible.
There's something in there about lighted signs too in that code, as I remember.
Well, there are lighting signs.
Perfect, yeah, so-
That doesn't mean that everybody's obeying the law. I'm just saying.
And there is a size limitation too.
Mhm. Yeah,
So I can't remember what that is. It's been too long.
I
since
know, if I had my other computer, I had it all pulled up on my other computer.
Do all those ordinances actually apply to the town
Yes.
or the private property owners on Main Street, on anywhere? I question whether we are, if it was intended for the town as well, because there's some conflicting things in there. But, again, I wouldn't suggest we do something that we don't want somebody else to do.
Right.
But my question is, how you get so much reflection in the windows? Would it, I have no idea. Would it have to be right up against the window in order to be able to see it, not see yourself looking in the window?
I don't think you would have to.
You could do a test with a monitor.
But I would imagine it would have to be that.
So is John's new system gonna preclude using one of these, and can we use those as our LEDs?
I think those are too big. But,
Still be in service.
right, so, yeah.
Just the way they are now.
Yeah, just buying it. I mean, you can get a huge freaking TV at Walmart for like $500.
That's fine. Okay,
It would be a cheap way to do it. And if I would have to, again, we'd have to measure the screen and make sure, and then I have to check the lighted code and make sure that we were within the sign code. But it would be a great way to advertise what the town is doing.
Isn't our webpage that? I mean, really, the webpage needs to be fixed in many ways. Because notifications, current events aren't on the front page. You can't get out a lot of stuff on the front page. You have to dig for it. What percent of the people go to the webpage for town information versus walk by the front window? I don't know.
But how many people just walk by the town hall?
And ignore every piece of advertising that they see up and down the street.
It's a thought. That's all, it was just a thought. And whether we move on it or not, it's just a thought. Another way, it was just like every time we do a bit of construction, I would love to have a sign that's out there in front of that construction saying, your tax dollars at work.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Could probably do that.
because that's exactly what it is. And when when we do our big CDOT construction on 15 grand, I would love to say $798,000 of your tax dollars at work.
Probably doable.
Yeah. So that people know, this is how it's being paid for. Okay, anything else on the mayor's report?
I have one more question, of course, so getting back to Region 10, and it may be a moot point now, but each region was going to hire a person who did nothing but help communities get grants.
Yeah.
Is that?
I think they may have finally hired somebody. I don't know if she's through her training yet. But they may have finally hired. To talk about a slow process.
I just don't know if we need them now, but
Yeah.
because we have Leslie.
Yeah,
But we
exactly.
have Leslie for so.
Leslie's looking tired tonight.
Anyway, so I just was curious what happened with that.
Usually when they hire somebody to help you get grants, they're not writing.
No, they're not
No.
writing the grants.
But
It's just a
you're,
consultant.
yeah, but you have so much information about grants in general. But so I don't know if we'll end up meeting this person, but maybe over the next couple of years. So I'm just curious.
And it,
That
that's
came
in
through.
person, and also it's shared between all the counties that reach and can serve, so you can imagine how thin they're gonna be stretched. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, go for it.
Anybody else?
No.
So, no, it's only 8:28.
Another hour.
Yes. And then, so I'm the energy funding opportunities of the Colorado Energy Office. So that's very intriguing. So my question is how does the town, or is there some expectation that the town of Paonia is going to help get the information out about this to let local folks know, or is this just an information thing that's nice?
It's just an information thing. You have to go through the Colorado Energy Office to get this stuff too. And it's, so, yeah. And the direct, I can't remember.
We had a role in this.
No, we really don't have any role in this, unfortunately.
And I have one last question. Yeah. Actually, it's a request. Could you put on the Muni Docs wherever the revolving fund loan application that was submitted? So we have that to reference. If you could make that, put that on Muni Docs as well.
Oh, that, I don't, it's one of those,
You can't?
it's one of those things where you have to go into the portal.
Oh,
And enter
Okay.
it all into the portal, so.
never mind then.
You can print it out, but it's not a very readable copy because it's almost like a screenshot that you.
Right. So it probably is not uploadable onto our Muni Docs.
Seen it, so.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking these things is that, questions come up and it's that Muni Docs location is the best place for us to store these documents in process and go back and look at and try to figure out what agenda packet it was in.
We can scan it. I mean, there's no problem scanning it, putting it
Really?
there. It's just it's gonna be hard to read. And if people complain, oh, the type is too small, there's nothing we can do about
Right.
that.
But for $23 million, I would love to have the ability to look at it, but that's just me. Just just cause.
Yeah, sometimes they will send us a PDF copy.
Oh,
But they
they
didn't.
didn't, probably because they got too much going on. Anyway, it'd just be kind of interesting to see it, but. Anyway. All right, that's all I had on your second mayor's report.
Okay, anything for the Parks Committee? Go.
So can we get a copy of the letter from GoCo? In the trustees?
We didn't
The
get.
rejection letter.
Right, the rejection letter.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
A lot of people asked me about wanting more details on that,
I
Dave.
mean,
You
would
were kind
that,
of sketchy on what you had in there.
Well, I just summarized what they said.
Yeah.
For the problems, I can forward that to Sam and she can send it to the rest of you.
Good.
I just,
There was actually quite a commentary. It was like a paragraph long, and I just tried to summarize the key points on it. But yeah, it was it was good feedback.
should it be in the public realm as opposed to just emails to us? Is there a great vehicle to do it? Maybe, I don't know.
Sam can make that decision.
Okay, I just think.
Oh, he knows.
Yeah.
So this could be our segue into the email you and I have had, Sam. Because I had asked her, when I was reading meeting minutes, there were references to documents that were not in the agenda packet, but were provided to us either by email the day of the meeting or we get them in paper copy. So I asked if there's some way that people can find those documents referenced in the meeting minutes. And Sam suggested appending an agenda packet and with a little note to do that, but I don't know if that's doable.
I actually did the February 14th meeting minutes like that because shortly after you and I talked about it, I actually found a form. That's what we're supposed to do. So if you go to the February 14th one now, all the way at the end, you'll find a packet modification thing that lists what was added. And I put a note on there that it was either got there too late to go into the digital minutes and was provided in hard copy at the meeting, and then I just made it a part of the permanent digital packet as well, because I have those in my permanent hard copy packets that I keep in the vault. But now there's a digital version of it as well.
Thank you. That solves the problem. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm done.
I just need to,
Okay. I think we're all done.
are you kidding me?
No.
Let's take a break. Let's go on our next meeting.
If anyone of the public would like to sign a letter that I have created supporting the purchase of the school, because it needs to have a support letter from the public. So if you'd like to come up here and sign this, I would appreciate it. And board members, you are welcome to come as well.
And maybe reference, Sam has an email distribution list for the agenda, am I correct? Could we also invite people to come to town hall?
Yes.
I can actually put that on the website, the only thing for the agenda, people have to sign up for that on the town website and they get notified when I publish on it.
Yes.
But I was gonna ask if I can put that up on the Facebook page and the town website to people to come in and. Yes.
So this is my dad and I were proposing in April, the second meeting, because it's been this.
Well, I should adjourn the meeting. Adjourn. But affiliation just puts it. Just.
Hey.